Viral marketing is the dream of everybody with something to sell, whether a product or a political message. It's an unpredictable phenomenon where something attracts so much interest on the internet that once you see it, you can't resist sending it on to your friends, and then they send it on again to their friends, and so it spreads like a virus. During the past week, what would normally be considered a pretty dry speech on British economics went viral. Daniel Hannan, a Conservative British member of the European Parliament, became a YouTube hit, excoriating the policies and performance of the British Labor Prime Minister Gordon Brown. In case you didn't see it, here's a taste.
When you repeat in that wooden and perfunctory way that our situation is better than others, that we're well placed to weather the storm, I have to tell you, you sound like a Brezhnev-era apparatchik giving the party line. You know, and we know, and you know that we know that it's nonsense. Everyone knows that Britain is worse off than any other country as we go into these hard times.
Within 24 hours of being posted, that clip had attracted 630,000 hits. Now, a week later, it's about to hit 2 million. Joining me from London at the end of the G20 week is the speechmaker Daniel Hannan. Mr. Hannan, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
2 million hits. How do you explain why this particular speech of yours went viral?
Do you know, I've really got absolutely no idea. I mean, a lot of the bloggers and the independent non-media people are using the fact to kind of attack the mainstream media, have a go at the BBC. I've got to say, if I were a BBC producer, I'd have made the same call. If I were trying to think of the 5 dullest words in the English language, speech to the European Parliament would be, you know, pretty high up the list. That's the funny thing about the internet. Nobody can predict what's going to tickle people. Neither I, nor the BBC producer, nor, I dare say, the ABC producer. And
it's not the first time that you'd posted a speech on YouTube by any means.
No, I've been doing it for years, and, you know, in the past, if I get 800, 900 hits, you know, I consider that a result. So, you know, it's a funny thing. The internet has broken down a lot of monopolies, including in politics and in the media, and it's a painful process of adjustment for people in my profession and I suppose for people in yours. Not so long ago, a relatively small number of lobby correspondents and political journalists would set the news cycle for the next 24 hours. And a minister or an opposition spokesman who had briefed all of those people would be pretty sure of getting some coverage. Now, that world, which was so recent, seems to belong to a different age now. Those structures have been pulverized. You now have millions of independent online commentators and pundits and consumers deciding for themselves, reaching a kind of aggregate view of what it is that they find interesting. It's a slightly scary world for those of us who were brought up in the old system, but it's also, I think, quite a liberating thing because people can now make up their own minds. You know, the message is disintermediated.
But how do we figure out what people are going to find interesting? Because, as you said, you posted lots of speeches in the past. It was, I guess, somewhat to be expected that you're a Conservative and you're attacking Gordon Brown's policies, yet all of a sudden it seemed to go viral. Is there any way we can predict these sorts of things?
No. I mean, that's the amazing thing about the internet. There was a book called The Long Tail by a guy called Chris Anderson making this point that up until now, everybody, the retailer, the publisher, the film producer, is trying to second-guess the market. And because we're all human beings and we're all fallible, we do it imperfectly. You don't know what's going to be the blockbuster and what's going to be the failure. You know, a book publisher works on the basis that maybe 1 in 5 books is going to make a profit and the other 4 aren't, but he doesn't know which of the 5 it's going to be. The same thing is true in politics now, and a lot of political parties have been very slow to see this. They still try and press the internet into their existing structures. You know, they treat the web as just one more mechanism to get their message across. It's way beyond that. You know, maybe in the US they're beginning to understand the full potential of the internet as a way of raising money, as a way of mobilizing campaigns, and above all as a way of appealing over the heads of your own party bigwigs, over the heads of the established pundits, if you think you've got something interesting to say that might strike a chord with people.
You say that they're perhaps old-fashioned in their approach, and I guess you mean things like when Barack Obama just posts a speech on YouTube or Downing Street puts out a very anodyne comment on Twitter. Given the unpredictability, though, of these new technologies, is there really any way that politicians can harness or control their potential?
I think so. I mean, I think Obama is quite an interesting example of the phenomenon. He launched his campaign not by making a big speech, not by calling a press conference, but by posting a video onto his homepage. And it is very easy now that he's there to see his rise as inevitable. But think back a few months to before the first primaries. The almost total consensus is that the Clinton family had an unbreakable hold on Democratic Party structures, that it was a shoo-in for Hillary. And 5 years ago it would have been. But the technological revolution allowed Barack Obama to do something that his predecessors couldn't have done, that Howard Dean came close to doing the last time round, but it wasn't quite there yet, which was to appeal over their heads because he had a compelling message. And people could hear it for themselves without needing, you know, a front man standing with a microphone interpreting it for them. And I think that's just made an absolutely colossal difference to the way politics is conducted, and I think a very good one, actually. It's a very healthy thing if the voter goes direct to the source and looks at what the political parties are saying without needing, you know, the chief political correspondent to tell them what it means, and then makes his own mind up as to which one he prefers.
In your own case, you've now got all of this wonderful mileage that any politician would love. Do you think that you can convert that into something now more substantial using that platform, or was it more of a just one-off aberration that you happened to make a speech that suited the zeitgeist?
You know, I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the brilliant thing about markets, and it's the brilliant thing about trying to predict them. I mean, I make speeches like that all the time. I think what this one had, maybe, in retrospect, I mean, I don't know, but my guess is that, you know, there is a real anger in Britain about the extent of our deficit, about the extent of our debt, and about the fact that, you know, we've never had an election with Gordon Brown. He came in after a kind of internal deal in the Labour Party. He looked as though he was going to go to the country last year, and then he chickened out at the last minute. So people feel unconsulted. And I think a lot of people would have liked to have grabbed the guy by the lapels and shouted at him, because he isn't a very listening sort of leader. Now, obviously, most people don't get the opportunity to do that. Under a quirk of the rules of the European Parliament, I did get to do that. And I suppose the next best thing, if you can't do it yourself, you get a certain vicarious pleasure in watching somebody else doing it for you. That I suppose, is why it caught on. What's going to be the next thing that catches on with people? You know, nobody knows. If I could tell you, if you could tell me, we'd be millionaires.